You know what the crazy thing is? All of the things that, say, Israel and Alex have, you have as well. They don't have anything that's particularly special about them. The only thing that they've done that you haven't is that they've established a very, very clear vision in their mind. And they've said, yes, I want to achieve this. And they've come up with a game plan with how they consistently can do that, not just for days, months, but for years. And that last little bit when we're in the sauna, there's something that happens with Israel. Something that happens in his eyes, and he becomes this different person. Every single time he looks up, he's coming out. This guy's coming out. Whatever he's going through, it grows. It's like this physical change, and he starts talking in his native language, and the music he plays is different. He's gone from being this person that has just done this fight camp and is cutting weight into he is the last style bender, and he's got to fight for this world championship.
Gypsy.
The weight situation with Volk to fight Islam and then to go back to 145, like what was that process like?
Yeah, it was definitely interesting. I think going down a weight class, people obviously think, oh, it must be so hard, like cutting all that weight off, but going up is equally as hard. And the hardest part about going up a weight class with these guys is giving them enough calories to match their output. Because although there's a lot of science to getting them in the deficit, it's a lot easier because their outputs are so high. Like he's training 6 hours a day. So you still got to fuel that. Like that's the game you're playing. How do I fuel it properly but still keep him in this deficit? But it's not hard to get him in a deficit. You just try not to be too deep in it. But then when you go the other way, it's like he's training 6 hours a day and I've got to keep weight on him. Like it's so much food you've got to eat, and then the whole game becomes, how do I get all of this food in? And it was almost like that was harder for Volk than what it is cutting weight, because you've spent your whole career kind of being okay with that feeling of I'm kind of hungry and blah, blah, blah. But now I'm saying, nah, we need to eat now. Like you need to keep this weight on, because the whole thing going in with Islam, there's a lot of strategy to it. Like between me, the coaches and the strength conditioning guys, was Volk is an exceptional athlete, but this guy's an exceptional grappler. And when it comes to grappling, you know better than anyone else, like if you can muscle your way out of a position, take it. Like they're both highly technical. But at the end of the day, if you're the smaller guy, and
strength definitely wins.
You're not. If you're both highly technical, strength usually is the determining factor. And we know Volk is really strong, but how strong is he compared to the lightweights? And we knew we had to maintain that strength through the fight camp, because what happens when you're cutting weight, you're obviously depleting and taking back on everything. So by the time you get to the weigh-in, you're obviously pretty depleted, you're weaker, and then the game in afterwards is to put as much back on, but in a way that you can get back to 100% or as close to it. But with Volk, we needed him at 100%, and we needed him almost to be at 110% the whole time. So we had to maintain that, and to do that, and with the training we had to do with the lifting program and everything, he had to be eating. It got upwards 4,000 when we started, then we step laddered it to 4,500, and then we peaked at 5,000 calories a day.
Fuck.
And that's not, there were foods, don't get me wrong, where we had to have like less ideal foods just to make up those calories. But most of that was good performance foods, because he feels good when he eats that. He doesn't feel great when you eat 2 bags of jelly beans. That we did have to introduce some things like that so we could just get the calories and the carbs and the sugars in, because the numbers were just so big. But for the most part, it was figuring out how do we get all the food that he feels great on and still hit these limits. So I was making a lot of smoothies and soups and sauces and things like that, and adding in these extra calories. 5,000 calories a day is a lot of food when you're doing 6 hours of training a day.
Dude, that's insane. 5,000 calories a day. And so were you staying with him for the majority of the camp, or like what was your, because even just preparing that much food is a massive job in itself.
He works with a chef called Paul Epsimos, and he runs this company called Athletes Nutrition Australia. Very, very good. We've worked with him for years. He's got a really good menu, but he's worked with Volk for ages, and I've got a good relationship. So we can make off-menu like food to fit Volk's diet plan. And it was crazy. He was getting like 3-4 boxes like twice a week or something. It was an insane amount of food. But again, we were trying to keep the volume lower because you didn't want to put too much volume in.
Yeah.
And we were trying to add in those like...
Yeah, because how do you train when you're so
exactly,
full?
that's the biggest thing, right? And then you have to time it when you get most of the calories in. And then what we had to do was get those, you know, not so healthy foods that are high calories and then substitute them in when we can. But Volk doesn't love eating heaps of them when he's training that much. So it was tough. But thank God, like, Paul sorted it out. It was just a crazy amount of food. Like, his fridge would have just been chock-a-blocked every day of the week full of these meal preps.
Yeah, right. So when you were doing, like, so was there a weight cut? Because it would make sense that he would want to be heavier because, all right, you don't want to be 155 in the cage. Like Islam, what do you think Islam would have been in the cage?
Probably closer to 170.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So how much is that in kilos?
So that would be like 77-ish.
Yeah, okay, cool.
78 probably.
Yeah, so Islam's going in there at 78. So it's not like you go, okay, let's just get Volk to 155 pounds, which is like 70
kilos,
70,
yeah.
And then, like, sweet, he'll fight that. You had to get him bigger, and I'm assuming do a weight cut, and then get him back up so that he could kind of match.
Yeah, exactly right. So
Yeah.
we had to spend time building his frame up so he could be bigger, because the other thing, the psychological side of it, every single fight you've done in the last 10 years when you've gotten ready for, you've done a weight cut before it.
Yeah.
There's a psychological process of how you get ready for a fight.
Yeah.
So that was a consideration. But like you said, Islam's going to be coming in, and he's big, so he wouldn't come in at 78. He probably came in at 81, 2, 3, 4 probably.
Yeah.
The Dagestanis love to cut weight. And so for Volk, we had to get him up and keep him around that 78 kilo mark. And then we started cutting weight from around 76, 77. It's interesting the balance you have to play, though, because size and strength will be an advantage to a point.
But then it can slow you down as an athlete.
And every athlete has their ideal weight. And we knew Volk's weight wasn't quite that heavy, and it was a little bit back before that. And that's where we spent the back end of camp, and that's where he looked great. So we're like, that's the weight we need to get back up to.
Yeah.
But we're going to give up a bit of the weight on Islam, but we know that's his best weight.
Yeah.
But we still had to cut weight from there. So he still did, percentage-wise, a pretty similar weight cut to what he did for featherweight.
Huh.
But it obviously just the last little bit where it's the real sucking out the fluid wasn't as intense.
Yeah.
But he still had to put on quite a bit of weight to get back to that weight. But that's because we programmed him being heavier and not losing the weight throughout the camp. And then the last 4 weeks, we brought it down a little bit, and then we still cut weight. So we went through that process, put it back on.
Yeah.
And I think we pulled it off pretty well, because he even said when he was in there, he's like, he's not that strong.
I remember hearing it, like,
Yeah.
maybe after the first round when he's coming back to the corner, and then I fucking love that dude. Like, he's one of the coolest athletes where the dude that you see on TV, on camera, in the cage, like, he's that same dude just in everyday life, whether you have dinner with him, whether you're in the gym down in Windang, like, he just stays the same. And yeah, he walked back from the corner, I think maybe after the first round. He's like, hey, he's not that fucking strong. Like, just literally like he's training with some, like, random dude from across the town.
That's coming from Volk, who's like, by and far, pound for pound, the strongest athlete I've ever seen. Like, the most explosive, crazy athlete. And he's like, oh, he's not that strong. He's like, yeah, everyone compared to you is not that strong, bro.
You fucking psycho.
Yeah.
When I went down and watched him train, I think it was for one of the holiday fights. It had to have been it was the second holiday fight. And I went down there and I was fucking balls deep in jiu-jitsu. Like, I'd been on a 3-year run of just training every day. And I went into that room and just went, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Like, are you serious? I'd never seen anything like it. And he would always say, hardest worker in the room, hardest worker in the room, hardest worker in the room. So clear to see, of all the savages that were in that room, hardest worker in the room by a landslide. And the other dudes are fucking animals and legends in their own right. Hardest worker in the room.
Oh, well, he's head and shoulders above everyone.
It's crazy,
crazy.
Dude.
It's crazy, but then when you get to know him and you see his work ethic, you're like, oh, yeah, I get it. Again, just did it 15 years straight, then 15 years of just grinding, and smart grinding too.
Yeah.
But his IQ's so good. Like, little details that he picks up on. You know, he's been around like Joe Lopez. Like,
Joe's a G, bro.
And he's so smart with fight sports, right? And then Alex obviously did his stints with like training with Brad Riddell, who's like a world-renowned kickboxer. He was in the UFC as well. And Alex just put himself around these smart people. Now he's with Craig Jones, perfecting that part of the game. Man. It's just like crazy.
What a brilliant strategy as well to bring Craig in. Like, you give Craig one jiu-jitsu problem or like a grappling problem. Like, I'm very interested to see Islam's next fights. And like, did Craig just fuck that program? Like, did he fully derail that train? Did he show the world what you need to do to beat Islam? Because I personally think that Alex won that fight, or was it just Alex was so gnarly and he achieved the game, or like he executed the game plan in that fight so well, or is it that, you know, Craig? It's got to be a mixture of the two. But I'm very interested to see if they take that same playbook for his next fight, which is probably Oliveira.
Yeah, it's crazy seeing the grappling exchange because Volk had two guys in there. So he had Craig and then he had Frank, who's the head wrestling coach at Bang Tao MMA. And they were this is the level of detail that they had. It was, which I won't say too much because I'm pretty confident that there's going to be a number 2 sometime. But it's like Frank would be so detailed on the entries, purely the entries, and then the next move after the entry.
Yeah.
And then Craig comes in, okay, what happens if it hits this point?
Yeah.
And they both had just perfected these two things. And Alex is just a sponge going through everything. And you've got one of the world's best wrestling coaches talking about all these different ways that this is going to initiate. And then you've got one of the best jiu-jitsu guys in the world that if it hits the ground or gets up against the cage, this is what you've got to do.
Yeah.
And it's just like, no wonder Alex held himself so well because he's just got these two masterminds that pretty much, like you said, decoded this pattern. And it's interesting hearing them talk about it because in their mind, it's like, it's very obvious what this is. But the rest of the world don't see it because all these little details. They see it for the sum of its parts.
They're not looking at each individual part on its own.
And it's just like these little tiny details that you and I would just be like, what are you talking about? And they're like, no, but then that leads into this and that and that. And you're like, I would never think that. But then as it comes together, like you look at Alex's performance and I thought they did pretty good. They did really good at how they decoded it. And it's like you said, I don't know, next fight I think it's going to be very interesting because I wouldn't want to be Islam going into that knowing like, shit, this guy he has it figured out.
We're excited to announce the launch of our new membership site, gypsytales.com. packed with exclusive content and perks that you won't find anywhere else. This is your chance to become a part of the Gypsy Gang. And as a special bonus, if you sign up to an annual membership, you'll be entered into the draw to win our custom-built TC125. Gypsy Gang.